Let's talk about the 5 things we learned in the 2022 fantasy football season. You are now listening to the Rival Fantasy Sports Podcast. Let's go. What's up, guys? I'm Neil here with Rival, and I want to talk about the 5 things we learned this season, 5 takeaways that we feel like we learned that we can use to build upon next season in the 23 season. Let's start with number 1. Davante Adams is not elite because of Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers didn't make Davante Adams elite. This is something that we thought coming into the season, there was a lot of concern about it, whether Davante Adams could still flourish with a quarterback like Derek Carr, or even less, or just different from Aaron Rodgers. Or was Aaron Rodgers the secret ingredient in Davante Adams' success? We found out flat out he is not. He is not. Davante Adams is quarterback proof. We've seen him flourish with Aaron Rodgers most of his career. We've seen him have a great season with Derek Carr for most of the season. And then we've seen him even have success with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. Yes, Jarrett Stidham. He had success with him. If we look at Davante Adams' numbers this year, he played all 17 games. He had 180 targets. This is going to happen no matter what. This is what we talked about before the season even started. I said the Raiders are going to target Davante Adams like crazy. This is what happened. He actually had more targets than he's had his entire career. It's true. He only had, out of 180, he caught 100 of them. So it's not even like he still missed 80 of his targets and had over 1,500 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns. He did have more yards and touchdowns in other parts of his career, not both at the same time, but he has had more. One year where he had more than the 1,516 yards, and one season where he had more than the 14 touchdowns. But still, great career numbers for him. I mean, great season numbers for him. And it just goes to show you again that it didn't matter who is that quarterback, because you can even say, well, Neil, I mean, Derek Carr is not a bad quarterback, and maybe he had all those numbers with him. No, when Stidham played, he also had good numbers. So he is quarterback proof. The reason why I think this is really important going into the 2023 season is we don't know who the Raiders quarterback is. We don't know. It literally could be Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to be, but it could be Aaron Rodgers. It could be Derek Carr. It's not going to be. That ship has sailed. Is it Jarrett Stidham again? Possibly. Are they drafting a quarterback? Are they looking for a CJ Stroud, an Anthony Richardson? I don't really care at this point. I don't care if it's Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't care if it's Tom Brady. I don't care in terms of Davante Adams. He is going to play well no matter what's happening out there, because we know he's going to get all the targets in the world. So we're not worried about that. The offense knows it flows through him and Josh Jacobs as long as Josh Jacobs returns. And we know that he's going to make plays as long as a quarterback throws that ball and gives him a chance. That's what happened. Even with Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham was throwing that thing up there and saying, listen, Davante's going to come down with half of these. You know what I'm saying? That's just all that matters. So Davante Adams is quarterback proof. Aaron Rodgers did not make Davante Adams elite. He is elite all on his own. Going into the 2023 season, have no fear. Draft him in your redraft leagues. Keep him in your dynasty leagues. Use him in DFS. Win money on Rival with him. Davante Adams all day in 2023. On to number 2. Tony Pollard is the best running back in Dallas. There's no question about it. He is the best running back. If you've been following the show for a long time, or at least since early last season, you know that I was big on Tony Pollard. I was chanting and raving and hoping that Dallas would start him over, Ezekiel Elliott, and just give him the workload at least more of the workload, because it was clear every time he got the ball, he was more explosive than Ezekiel Elliott. It just is what it is. He was better than Ezekiel Elliott. If we look at the stats on the season, he played one more game than Zeke because Zeke had the injuries, but for attempts, he only had 193 attempts, 231 for Zeke. He still had 1,007 rushing yards. Zeke only had 876 with the more attempts, because Tony Pollard was averaging 5.2 per carry, Zeke 3.8. Zeke did have more touchdowns on the ground, rushing the ball, 12 touchdowns to Tony Pollard's 9. Again, that's just because he's getting more of the attempts at the goal line. And then receiving wise, Tony Pollard had 39 receptions, 371 yards, 3 touchdowns. Zeke had 17 receptions for 92 yards, no touchdowns. The better overall season went to Tony Pollard. He's now a top 10 running back for me in fantasy football going into 2023. So when you're in your redraft leagues, you're drafting him early enough to make him one of your top 10 running backs. I think that he's going to continue to outplay Zeke. I said it before, like I said, maybe week 3, I said it, week 2, somewhere in there, week 4. We'd have to go back and actually pull the episode to see which one it was. But I even said that he would finish as the better player this year in fantasy football, and he did just that. Zeke had 185.8 points in fantasy and PPR. Tony Pollard finished with 248.8, so almost 250. So this was beautiful. Again, top 10 running back from Tony Pollard. Yeah, that's what he is going forward. That's how you have to, look at him. Do not be afraid that, Zeke will have this resurgence or there's going to be a new offensive coordinator. The Cowboys just can't continue to deny Tony Pollard and his ability. And I think as the season went on, we've seen that more and more. And going into 2023, we'll see it even more than we did this year. So I'm really excited about Tony Pollard. He is the best running back in Dallas. I don't know if Cowboy fans hate to hear that, if they're happy to hear that. I'm not sure, where their loyalty lies with Zeke or Tony, if they really care as long as, they're winning games. They have bigger issues. The Dak situation was weird. It didn't play out. It didn't look well. They fired their offensive coordinator. Things are weird there right now. But overall, what I do feel comfortable saying about Dallas is Tony Pollard is the best running back there. He will be a top 10 running back in 2023. And that is another thing that we learned in 2022. On to number 3. Daniel Jones has become a top 10 quarterback. Did I just say? Was that in the notes? Is this right? Am I reading this right? Daniel Jones is a top 10 quarterback. First season in this offense with a new head coach, and he flourished. He flourished. Daniel Jones flourished at quarterback. And it wasn't just because of what he did with his arm. He didn't just throw the ball. And that's the key here. That's the difference maker, honestly. On the season, he finished in the top 10. He was quarterback 9. So that's crazy in itself, right? And they're like, well, how did he get there, Neil? What exactly did he do to have that type of finish? And it's because what he did with his legs. It really is. I mean, he threw the ball decent. It wasn't bad, but overall, the stats on the ground are what really transcended his game here, which really took him to another level. So if we look at the 16 games Daniel Jones played, he had 3,200 passing yards, 15 touchdowns. He kept the interceptions low, which was a big part of that. He only had 5 interceptions. Really good to see. But the rushing stats, check this out. 708 rushing yards with 7 touchdowns. Not too bad. Not too bad. Now, we knew he had some mobility, right? Like in his previous 3 seasons, he definitely got some yards. I want to say he was in like the 300 range and above, or maybe his average was 300, right? Let's just say that. He was averaging 300 yards probably the last 3 seasons. He was getting a couple of touchdowns every year, but this year he just took it to the next level. Of course, he played more games than he had in the past. He was healthier. Again, he kept the interceptions low, which is a big thing. He had the lowest interceptions of his career. He actually had, in his rookie season, he had more passing touchdowns than he did this year. So what I say about this is some people go, well, he may regress in the rushing game, Neil. He may not get the 7 touchdowns. You're right. But what if his passing game improves? And in his rookie season, he had 24 passing touchdowns. So if we bring the passing touchdowns up to like 20, keep the interceptions low, even if you lose a couple of rushing touchdowns there, but you keep the yardage up, because why would he stop rushing the ball altogether? Obviously, this team had a lot of success in that regard. I really like it. I really like the Daniel Jones, trajectory here with what's happening with this guy, what's happening with this offense. I really see good things here. And think about it. This is the guy who, honestly, at wide receiver was, this ragtag group of guys. Some were injured, some weren't living up to expectations and the contracts they signed, mostly injuries, right? Like every time there would be a young guy who would start to flash injured. So they got a whole bunch of wide receivers here to figure out. You'd like to believe that they're still going to add some for sure talent, maybe a free agent, maybe draft another wide receiver, but just guys getting healthy in general are going to impact this offense, plus just another year in the system. So Daniel Jones, for me, top 10 quarterback season, obviously. It's all up from here. I'm really excited about this, and I'm happy that the Giants stuck with him, gave him a chance, let it develop, got the new coach in there. The new coach stuck with him. See, this is the value when a coach gives the guy a chance and he flourishes. Then you could build off of that guy rather than, just replacing him. Like similar to what the Raiders are doing. They gave Derek Carr a chance. They felt like it wasn't working. It wasn't translating to wins, and so they move on. Rather than coming in and immediately saying, I want my new guy, I want my own guy. I like the way these coaches have done it this season. And in this case, for Daniel Jones and the Giants, it worked out. I see this only staying the same or getting better for Daniel Jones. So I don't see any kind of major regression here for you guys to panic about. So if you have him, obviously if you're in Dynasty and you could trade him for overvalued, with someone thinks better of him, maybe you get a Giants fan who's really overvaluing him, then if the deal makes sense, certainly do it. But I think going into the 2023 season, you don't have to like panic or like think you have to hedge yourself here and sell him thinking that he's going to regress. I think he's pretty safe, honestly, going into the 2023 season. So I think Daniel Jones could be a top 10 quarterback again next season. And we learned that in 2022. On to number 4. Every season, we kind of look at the offenses, we look at the quarterbacks, we look at their wide receiver groups, and we say, how many can really feed 2 wide receivers? How many can really do that? How many can really, you're like, well, they have this guy, they have that guy, but can he really feed them both? And this is a testament. And when you're in fantasy, this raises the value of the quarterback. This raises the value of the whole offense, but it also gives you less concern or fear thinking, can they feed 2 wide receivers? 6 teams had 2 wide receivers in the top 26 in PPR this season. That is Miami with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. We got Philly with AJ Brown and Smith. We got Cincinnati with Chase and Higgins. We got Jacksonville, surprisingly on this list, which is kind of just that one. If you would have told me Zay Jones and Christian Kirk would have finished in the top 26, I would have doubted you. I would have bet against that. So this was a really good sign for like this Jacksonville offense for Trevor Lawrence. Question being now is they have Calvin Ridley next year. So I'm not saying that these 2 guys are going to be the ones in the top 26 again, because Calvin Ridley is super talented. And if he's healthy, got the rust off, clearly this dude is top 26 potential. So and above that, right? So if they can get this offense, rolling with him and Zay, and it's just, man, this offense could be electric, even more than it was this season. How crazy is that? So that was really impressive to see. They were the big shocker on the group for me. And then you have Seattle with Metcalf and Lockett, obviously. And then you have Tampa with Godwin and Evans, obviously. So this was awesome to see. The fact that 6 teams can get it done. I believe more can do this. And anytime we see teams do this, it gives me hope, right? So instead of being afraid of an offense and saying, well, I don't know if they can feed both guys, I'm going to back off this other wide receiver because I think this one's going to eat more. This one's not going to get enough because there's just not going to be enough balls to go around for the team. And in this case, these teams have proved that you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to be afraid of that. And so if you have a talented quarterback and you have a good offense, these things can work themselves out. And so this is great to know that we learned 6 teams were able to feed 2 wide receivers in the top 26. Maybe we'll have more next season. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you think there'll be a new team in this top 6. If you think some of these teams are going to fall out of it, like, I'm curious your thoughts. But if you had to pick one team who can make it into this list, where next season and in 2023, we're talking about this team feeding 2 wide receivers, finishing inside the top 26 at PPR, let me know in the comments. On to number 5. Our last one, number 5. This is an interesting one. From weeks 13 through week 18, Jerick McKinnon and Cam Akers were top 4 running backs. They finished in the top 4 overall if all you did was look at week 13 to week 18. And I really like this because if you think about it, McKinnon is a guy who has had this hype his whole career. He's dealt with injuries his whole career, and it just never fully came together, right? We would see these flashes of brilliance, this flash of, high level skill, and then it just wouldn't happen because of the injuries or the offense went away from it or whatever the case may be. Then in Cam Akers, you got a guy who was injured badly, bounced back. We thought coming into this season, okay, he's fully healthy. Let's see how it works out. By the time we came to the trade deadline, he was asking to be traded. He didn't even want to be on the Rams. So it obviously wasn't working out, right? No, it did work out because he finished the season in the top 4 if we just count weeks 13 to week 18. So obviously with McKinnon, he's a free agent in 2023. His value is highly dependent on where he goes. I really only care if he goes back to the Chiefs. That's my main thing, right? Like if he goes back to the Chiefs, I feel all in, super good on Jerick McKinnon. If he goes somewhere else, I'm not as confident. There's no Patrick Mahomes where he goes. There's no Andy Reid where he goes. There's no telling if the offense is going to be able to get him working like the Chiefs did. I actually have no confidence that any offense will get it working like the Chiefs did for him. So if he goes somewhere else besides Kansas City, I'm definitely concerned. I'm definitely not going to treat him like the guy he finished as. If he stays with the Chiefs, I am going to do that. I am going to treat him like that because there's no reason for the Chiefs to go away from what worked so well. Potentially by the time you're watching this, he's a Super Bowl champion, right? So I feel really good about McKinnon. If he stays in Kansas City, I would believe that he would want to and that the team would want to stay there. With Cam Akers, he actually has another year on his contract with the Rams. So he's back with the Rams. So you feel good about that in terms of we know what works for them and that they found out. at the end of the season, he actually is as good as, maybe they anticipated, right? So I like this a lot, for both these guys. Again, for me, it more comes back to if McKinnon returns as a Chief. If he doesn't, I'm definitely more skeptical about it. And we'll talk about that when the time comes, obviously. But at the end of the season, the way Cam Akers ended it, you'd have to believe that the Rams want him back. We don't know what's going to happen, though. Like, are they going to draft a running back? Are they going to sign a running back? Those things could definitely happen and definitely put Cam Akers in a bad spot again. So again, lots of things are going to happen between now and then. But we learned in 2022 that Jerick McKinnon still belongs in this league and on the right team is elite. And we learned that Cam Akers, no matter the ups and downs, the injuries, the team situations, he can flourish still in this league. He can still play really well in this league and be consistent if the opportunity is presented correctly and he's not having too much competition for the workload and making things weird and just making it difficult. So again, I'm excited about both these gentlemen, but it matters where they land. And it happens to be the case for a lot of people. And in the team situation and the roster situation, all these variables matter. But we learned that Jerick McKinnon and Cam Akers, with a good majority of the workload and in the right opportunity, are elite in fantasy for you this year, next year, and following, just depending on the team situation that they land in or what changes and evolves in that offense. All right, guys, that's it for the 5 things we learned in the 2022 fantasy football season. You can use these things to carry over into 2023. Prepare yourself now. If you're in Dynasty, obviously it never stops. If you're in redraft, the homework doesn't stop. The research doesn't stop. This is the information you want to carry over with you. I want to know what you learned in the 2022 season. What player shocked you? Which player surprised you? Which player didn't and you anticipated it and it actually played out how you wanted? What did you learn in the 2022 season that you're going to carry over to the 2023 season? Again, let us know in the comments on YouTube. We really appreciate everyone who chops it up there in the comments with us. If you're only listening on audio, you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can leave what you learned in 2022 in a review if you haven't left a review yet. Otherwise, jump over into the YouTube comments at least. Even if you don't watch it on video, you can jump into the comments there. We're going to interact with you anyway. So, or social, whichever is your preference. And you can follow us on any of our social platforms, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the sorts. We're on there at Rival Fantasy on all the social platforms. If you are watching this video, you made it all the way through, I really appreciate you. Please go ahead and hit subscribe so you can catch future videos as soon as they drop. And again, thank you for the love. Thank you for hitting likes. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for all that. We really appreciate you. Most of all, don't forget, if you're looking to fill your time, you want to try to win some money, you want to have some fun while you're watching baseball, basketball, football, whatever it is, go to rivalfantasy.com. Play on there. We have challenges for you, which is like head-to-head fantasy point status. You got fantasy book, which you're picking over, under on fantasy point projections, 2 to 5 players. And then we have Fantasy Bingo, the most unique game in daily fantasy sports right now. Get your bingo cards, get them, try to fill them up, try to win some money. It's a lot of fun, guys. If you have any questions about rivalfantasy.com, you can also drop that in the comments. That's it for today's video. I'm out.